Welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate. Tonight we'll be speaking about measures and steps taken by the state under the directives of President Abdel Fattah ElSissi in order to be able to counter the repercussions of the world crisis and challenges because of different issues, but at top of them is, of course, the Russia military operation on Ukraine and all the global repercussions or the economic repercussions that were made on the whole globe. We'll be speaking about how Egypt tackled the issue. We'll be speaking also about the global economic challenges that are being witnessed at this very particular time, especially after the coronavirus and this pandemic that has lasted up till this minute for almost 2 years, and all the economic repercussions that we have seen during the past period. And from this perspective, the President has held a government meeting last Tuesday with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense, Interior, Supply and Internal Trade, in addition to the head of the General Intelligence Service, General Abbas Kamel. And that meeting has been dealing with the following up of the provision of a strategic vision to the stocks of all the basic commodities, particularly with the approach of the holy month of Ramadan. And after the meeting, the Prime Minister conveyed the President's directives to prepare a plan to deal with the repercussions of the global crisis and take the measures that is aimed at mitigating its negative effects on the citizens and the economy. Definitely, a bunch of measures since last Tuesday has been already taken, and today we'll be focusing on those measures and highlight our expectations for this upcoming future. Before we delve into our discussion, let me welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, Professor of Economics, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Before we start with our discussion, and as part of the measures that were taken here, the Prime Minister has held a meeting today with the Central Bank of Egypt governor, in addition to a number of ministers, including the Minister of Planning, Finance and Industry. The meeting reviewed the economic situation and measures taken to embody the repercussions of the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. During the meeting, Dr. Madbouli reviewed measures taken by the government and the Central Bank of Egypt to alleviate the negative effects of the crisis on the Egyptian economy. Definitely, there will be monetary measures taken as well in order to counter the inflation rates and growth that are that the country has been exposed due to the crisis. We'll be speaking about that and more. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have this quick report. And President ElSissi orders fixed price for non-subsidized bread and overall strategic plan. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah ElSissi met with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Defense and Military Production General Mohammed Zaki, Minister of Supply and Internal Trade Dr. Ali Al-Musalhi, Minister of Interior Major General Mahmoud Tawfiq, and the Head of General Intelligence Service Major General Abbas Kamel. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi says that the meeting followed up on the efforts being made to provide strategic stocks of all basic food commodities, particularly as the holy month of Ramadan is approaching. In this context, the Minister of Supply presented the strategic stock of all basic food commodities in Egypt, confirming that they are available in appropriate quantities. The President gave directives for diversifying the sources of these commodities, while seeking to increase their stock for a period of no less than 6 months. President ElSissi was briefed on the government's efforts over the past period to control and monitor prices. The President gave directives to study the expenses of the production of unsubsidized bread, as well as its pricing, provided that the Ministry of Supply provides the flour necessary for bakeries so as to control the price. The President also directed to promptly determine the incentive for additional supply for the price of local wheat for the current agricultural season. The spokesman added that as part of efforts to support the most vulnerable segments ahead of the holy month of Ramadan, President ElSissi stressed the importance of coordination among all relevant authorities, particularly the armed forces, the Ministry of Supply, and Tahya Misr Fund, so as to provide basic food commodities at reduced prices, in addition to distributing Ramadan boxes of basic commodities.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, Professor of Economics. Thank you again for being with us. The Russian-Ukraine crisis and the global economic crisis that we are witnessing, and how you read the whole situation.
It's a disaster. It's a global disaster. Unfortunately, we are moving from one pandemic to another one. First one is health pandemic. Now it's a global political, economical pandemic. Honestly, it's very difficult now to predict or forecast the future for any country, not just Egypt. But I'm talking globally, because every day there are new news coming, and these news are sometimes promising positive news, and other of them are negative. But overall, we have to take our action as a country to try to foresee what will happen, especially that we are talking about potential of a third world war.
We are not taking this matter from the political side, and we are seeing more problems economic-wise.
Yeah.
Because seriously, what we are speaking about is how nations would really suffer. And this is, we are part of the nations, and we are part of the whole globe. So if we speak about the economic crisis as seen globally, and definitely we'll speak how it reflects on developing countries and on Egypt, part of the developing countries, please.
Sure. I think the most important issue is that we are currently facing, again, I'm talking globally because Egypt is part of the globe.
Yes, definitely.
We're not that extent away from what's happening. So two issues are very important. The piling of supply, the supply chain, definitely it will be, there will be shortage because of the sanctions done. And that's why I cannot really separate between economic and politics. So the sanctions, the economic sanctions, now I'm talking about economic sanctions now, will have the drastic concerns about the supply chain stockpile. And I think Egypt, first thing they looked at this, and that's why the president already took action regarding the supply chain. The second issue of utmost concern, because somehow they are interrelated, is prices. The prices is escalating in unprecedented way. We're talking about natural gas, we're talking about oil, we're talking about seeds, we're talking about iron. It's all over the place, So these are two issues that we have to put them in front of us economically, because the consequences for a population like Egypt, 100 million, and most of them are below the poverty line, I have to assume that, then we have to take our actions immediately. And so that's why I was happy to hear that the president initiated already the issue of controlling and regulating the prices in Egypt. And I hope the issue of delaying any kind of price escalations should not be now, because this will have the consequences on the Egyptian public. The second thing, the issue of the subsidies. Bread subsidies is a taboo, and I think we know that by now. So,
but the president opened this taboo. And he started already with controlling
the president talked about the supply, and he wants to ensure that there is a supply.
Yes,
but the unsubsidized bread is different than subsidized bread. So there was an increase in the unsubsidized bread. That's why your report is talking about the bakery.
Yes,
but I'm
indeed.
talking about the subsidized. That is of concern because Egypt is importing 80% of its wheat is coming from Russia and Ukraine.
Yes, that is
And-
part, yes. Let me here say or comment taking from your words. That was one issue the state has started with and the leadership was keen on. Wheat.
Wheat, yes.
Importing wheat, also
Diversifying the sources of wheat now.
diversify, definitely, and also that we are cultivating wheat.
But
and
that's what
this is-
I'm trying
Please,
to communicate
please.
to you, which is, I think there is now, and I think the president already took action on that, trying to encourage farmers to increase their cultivations of wheat. Because Egypt actually consume over 20 million tons of wheat. 13 of them are imported and 7 are locally produced or cultivated. So I think there is more incentives now being provided for farmers to increase their cultivations of wheat. Not only that, we are blessed that our supply of wheat is for 5 months reserve. And then the first intake of domestic wheat coming is in April. So that will increase our supply of wheat from 5 months to 9 months. And that's a very good record to tell the Egyptian population they should not be worried about the inavailability of wheat. So that's number one. The issue of subsidized versus subsidized, I think also we have to give a message for the Egyptian public that the subsidized for now is not going to be approached as the unsubsidized. I'm talking about the bakeries and the other things. And I think they are even trying to regulate that side in terms of making sure that there will not be any price hikes because of this increase of the unsubsidized bread prices. So that's a very important point that we have to be aware of. The second one, away from wheat, is oil. And so
but before we go from wheat, we have also to speak about stopping the exports of
all seeds have been
yes,
as per
indeed.
the Minister of Industry.
Yes, that was one measure also taken.
Measure that for the next 3 months there will be. But this is like an aspirin to calm things down.
Definitely.
But we have to look, as a country, we have to look more strategic. So the strategic is now what are we going to do with oil? And so luckily, which is sometimes when you have a problem, it could be an opportunity for us. If the war continues, then there is doubts that the supply of natural gas from Russia will be the same, because obviously the EU started to look for alternatives. And this was announced on the last press conference done by the EU, which means that Egypt is a potential country to supply natural gas to Europe. And that hopefully can increase our foreign exchange reserve, which is again could be a blessing because we need to pay for the hike in the oil prices internationally. You know, we are the only country until now, which is something that I appreciate from the government, that we did not increase the prices of oil yet on the gas pumps. So that's, however, it's a must. They have to think of what could be the alternatives. So from reading the scenarios in Egypt, I think we are putting our hands on where are the bottlenecks. Wheat, oil prices, because oil price is not going to affect only transportation. It will affect other products as well and other industries. Thirdly is tourism.
Before we go
take
into
step by
tourism, yes, let me here stick to the issue of the oil prices and energy at large. We're
Yeah.
speaking about oil and gas.
step.
And we have seen lots of measures taken, including important visits carried out by the president during the past period. The latest was to Saudi Arabia in preparation for next moves. So since we're speaking about how oil and gas and energy can really reflect on the issue, how do you view the moves taken diplomatically in order to be able to make a one stand towards the issue?
You said you should not talk about politics. Now
Yes,
we're going into
it's not.
politics.
Not really. We're speaking economically wise, and the prices of oil. That
I admired the decision made by the Egyptian government when there was the voting about Russia in the United Nations. They were in favor, however, in favor of the political stand. However, they were against the economic sanctions that are out of the international community, which means that we are holding the middle of the West and the East. We have a lot of relations with Russia, because you're asking me about the Egyptian diplomacy.
no, actually, I was asking just about the oil prices.
No, because this is, the oil is just one factor of where do we stand, because we don't want to have sanctions in the future from any other side, the West or the East. And so this has to be appraised, because that will have a positive impact on our economy.
Right. Getting back to what we are speaking about, and we are speaking here also about the Egyptian government's rapid moves to discuss a number of issues. We're speaking here about the stockpiles of wheat, as you said, respectively. We're speaking also about importing or diversifying our resources from importing wheat. We're also speaking about very important issue, controlling the prices.
Yeah.
And here today, the Interior Ministry issued a statement detailing the latest measures taken to control markets that were under the instructions of the President to control market at this very particular stage. Please illustrate, please, how the recent moves are seen, and how are we providing the citizens with commodities, basic commodities, at an affordable price.
That's, I think, what your report was talking about last Tuesday, meeting the President and the Minister of Supply and Minister of Interior.
Mm-hmm.
These are the two things I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion. That there is two issues, the stockpiling of the supply chain, and so that's why the Minister of Supply was in the meeting. And then the other point was the Minister of Interior to control and monitor the price increases. So these are two important factors. Plus, you know, we are getting into Ramadan, as everybody knows by now.
And here is the initiative. We are all together in one. That's
exactly,
one initiative.
This is what I was going to refer to, the issue that we will have to provide for the population at large, the stock of Ramadan supply with affordable prices. And that's why the public sector will interfere to try to provide them, so that it will be a balance between the private sector and the government initiatives. The government initiative is the one that was His Excellency the President was talking about.
Yes.
So I think this, again, because we have in the back of our mind these two important, how can I control prices? Because it's out of our control, the hikes in international prices. However, we have to take initiatives for the Egyptian, and this was already taken. The other one is the stockpiling of supply. And I think 9 months is adequate enough. The third one is controlling the interest and the inflation. All right.
That is the monetary policy that we will be speaking about. But before we go that, let's cover this very particular issue, this important initiatives that carries lots of aspects. We're speaking about providing the citizens with the basic commodities with affordable prices. We're speaking about poultry, we're speaking about meat, and we're speaking
a whole package.
A whole package, indeed. And here it is, as we are seeing. Definitely a number of institutions and a number of
the flour
organizations are are into this initiative. When we speak about how this initiative would be carried out and until when it should continue, how the Egyptian citizens are seeing those initiatives, and what should be the next stage?
As I told you at the beginning of our discussion here, nobody knows exactly where the direction is. I think that things will be in a positive manner in the next couple of weeks. This cannot stand forever. Because it's not
Hopefully.
only the impact on developing countries. The impact will be more on Europe. And
already Europe
you know, and
is lost.
you know, so I'm not going to delve into what's going on for Europe, but I'm going to talk about my country. I think we are taking the adequate measures to sustain the dramatic impacts, negative impacts that could happen to the Egyptian economy. So already this is taken. For how long? I believe it should be at least until the end of the year.
The president here spoke about at least the holy month of Ramadan, so people would not really feel the pressure. I know that you will say that this is a grave pressure on the government itself. This is...
Let me tell you one thing. No country will go bankrupt.
Yes.
Okay? So we have to bear this in our mind. I mean, if you look at US, it's one of the most indebted countries in the world. But still they are strong. I think we have the natural resources that can enable us to stand any kind of spikes that takes place. Remember that we passed the pandemic in a shooting stars remarks and grades. And I think we are already experienced enough to massage ourselves through this unexpected period of instability economically and politically as well. So I'm not really concerned. However, I will be concerned if I didn't see any actions already taken. But you can see the meetings and the frequency of the meetings and the action taken on the ground. Today, as you mentioned before our airing, that there was the meeting of the central bank governor and the prime minister. This is all our good news. The question is, what's next? The next, you have to take it as step by step.
And the next, plus the monetary or expectations for the monetary policies, plus some of the other successes that we did not speak about. We'll speak about that, but after I take this report. In Egypt, endeavor to curb rising prices of food commodities to pre-crisis rates ahead of the holy month of Ramadan. Let's watch.
Egypt endeavors to curb rising prices of food commodities to pre-crisis rates ahead of Ramadan. Egypt formed a crisis committee to confront the impacts of the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, similar to the one that was formed when the coronavirus pandemic hit the country in 2020. Earlier, President Abdel Fattah ElSissi has mandated the government to prepare different scenarios in addition to an emergency plan to mitigate the crisis' negative effects. Last week, the public prosecution ordered the detention of 12 merchants over charges of hoarding commodities to take advantage of global inflation and the Ramadan shopping season, which is set to start in early April, to later hike prices. This is part of the country's efforts to tighten control on the local market to maintain price stability and secure the availability of goods amid global circumstances. The committee will hold weekly meetings to continuously assess the repercussions of the crisis, especially on the country's strategic commodities. To ensure that food commodities are secured in the local market throughout Ramadan, Minister of Supply and Internal Trade, Ali Musalhi, confirmed that his ministry would continue to provide the commodities in various outlets at pre-crisis prices. He added that a gradual decrease in the prices of a large number of commodities has been observed in the markets thanks to the measures that have been taken, whether related to the provision of commodities or the temporary ban on the export of a number of other commodities. Furthermore, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli issued directives to the government to intensify the monitoring of merchants' outlets to ensure that everyone is providing all goods at reasonable prices to meet citizens' demands during Ramadan. President ElSissi has also given directives to provide the farmers with incentives to encourage them to supply the largest possible amount of wheat this year. Globally, the price of wheat has increased by 48%, cooking oil by 32%, corn by 30%, sugar by 7%, frozen meat by 11%, poultry by 10%, and petroleum by 55%. However, the Prime Minister asserted that the prices of wheat and cooking oil in Egypt have increased by only 17% and 10% respectively, as the country is witnessing a lower level of increase compared to other countries. Nearly 80% of Egypt's consumed wheat comes from Russia and Ukraine, and in light of the latest recent announcement of not exporting commodities, including wheat, corn, grains, salt, and meat, Cairo has set its eyes on 14 alternative markets, including non-European countries like the US, Argentina, Canada, and Paraguay, to meet its grain needs. In an attempt to deal with expected shortages in wheat, Egypt has recently banned the export of wheat, fava beans, lentils, pasta, and all kinds of flour for the next 3 months. Moreover, in light of the advent of the month of Ramadan, the Ministry of Trade and Industry decided on Saturday to impose an export ban on cooking oil, corn, and all kinds of cracked green wheat for 3 months. Furthermore, the Supply Ministry is launching the Ahlan Ramadan initiative across all governorates this week, in addition to preparing Ramadan boxes and giving out coupons for food commodities for the neediest groups. The ministry will also prepare 500,000 Ramadan bags, in addition to distributing 800,000 kilograms of meat, 500,000 of which will be distributed during Ramadan. The ministry said that the order to deter any attempts to manipulate prices as the We Are All One initiative will kick off on Wednesday, with the aim of offering products at a reduced price till the end of Ramadan.
Right. Welcome back, and back to Dr. Hegazy. And we were speaking about the other sectors that are to be put into consideration while putting this integral strategy for the whole upcoming stage. Tourism. Tourism, plus definitely the investments or the movement of investment. So how do you view the situation regarding or the outlook towards tourism? Because there are good news and there are not very good ones, and
again, you know, sometimes these critical conditions create opportunities and could create a time frame where you can rethink your strategies. We relied predominantly during the pandemic even on Russia and Ukraine as two important travel inbound destinations. And I think now we are shifting, obviously because of the conditions. The cancellations of Russia and Ukraine is exceeding 35% for the next 6 months. And so I think Egypt now is diverting its focus on other countries, whether it is UK, because still was one of the largest, Germany and Italy. I think this should be the focus now of the Ministry of Tourism and the Egyptian Tourist Authority, ETA. And this is the right track because you have to diversify. The question is, where would you go? Definitely the Arab countries will also be another focus, but the name of the game here is you have to diversify until further notice, because I still strongly positively believe that this will not last for long. That's number one. The second is we have, and I think the government should be looking at this point here, we have to give incentives for those who work in travel and hospitality business, because what if, the scenario of what if, there will be diminishing booking and reservation for the next period, for whatever reasons. So the government has to be ready with initiative to float the industry of tourism in Egypt until we can see the picture more clear. But again, we did that before in the pandemic, if you recall, and I think we have to be ready again for another initiative from the Central Bank of Egypt.
Getting to investment and investment opportunities and the movement of investment.
That's the positive, I think, yes, that Egypt can benefit out of it. The Suez Canal, and the industrial zone on the Suez Canal, because usually, I mean, actually, the North Sea route of trade between Europe and it will definitely go back from the lower side for security issues. So I think we expect that the revenues and returns of the Suez Canal income, hopefully it should increase. Not only that, since we already are starting economic zones on the Suez Canal, so this could be like a hub of transportation coming from south to Europe, because Europe now is definitely blocked from the north side. So they have to feed their supply from the southern side. So that's one. Investment also, I expect investments to be more in exploring further the natural gas and oil, because this, as I mentioned, the stockpiling of supply, we are taking care of that, at least for the basics ones. And then the other one is the prices. So prices, oil and natural gas, is in our favor because you are a net exporter now of natural gas. And I think there is in the pipeline negotiations of how can we feed Europe with our natural gas. The issue of oil, you mentioned in our discussion, this collaboration between the Arab countries and Egypt regarding oil. And I think even the OPEC is taking its due diligence to inject more oil so that the prices will not. And you can see actually the price of oil now is going down. It went up, but now it's 106. It's 106, so it's going down.
Today was 103, 104.
Yeah, around this, yeah. So, but it was reached 130 and certain, but obviously there is collective action taking place for oil. But I rely predominantly on exporting, because on the other side you need hard currency. Because what we're facing in Egypt now is something, we call it stagflation, which is a combination of stagnation coupled with inflation. So we expect from the positive side of investments, then we can generate a little of the hard currency. On the other side, I think Egypt, for that meeting today, I expect there will be some kind of announcement by next Thursday. Not this Thursday, but the next one. Because that's the meeting of the Central Bank Board of Egypt, the Central Bank Governor Board of Directors. The Fed in the US have increased their interest rate from 0.25 to 0.4, and that never happened during the last decade, which then indications that even in the US there is inflation, not just in Egypt. So I expect to protect the Egyptian currency that there will be a little spike in our interest rate. That comes to reduce the inflation a little bit. But the concern, which is I think this is the dilemma that you are in, when you do that, we don't want to get into recessions. Okay, so that's the trade-off, and that's a decision that the government has to make. But definitely, if you look at which one is more dangerous, is the issue of prices, because that's going to mushroom in other products as well. So I expect certain spikes, not hikes, but spikes in our interest rate.
If I may ask you, just so that very normal people would understand what we are speaking about, because normal people would not really understand what's the spikes and what's the hikes.
A little increase in
yes, I
rate.
understand a marginal increase in the percentage
Yeah.
of the, yes, definitely, I understand, but people would want to really to understand how would that reflect on the scene inside the country? How would that control the price, or how would monetary...
It will reduce the demand, because if there is an increase in prices, people will put their money in banks. Or
why would the
cost
Central
to
Bank of Egypt increase the percentage of
so that the Egyptian currency look
at the time of the inflation for an
but that's this is the $100 million answer. That's why they call it stagflation, which is you have two things. Usually prefer to have recession alone, so you can reduce the interest and boost the economy, and employment will increase, economy size, the GNP will increase. But you have the other side, which is inflation, and this is not a demand-based inflation, like people are buying more, so the price go up. No, this is a cost-based inflation, which means that the prices of the products is getting up. So automatically a selling price and retail price will go up. So the only way to try to reduce that is that you increase the interest rate, so people will be less willing to borrow funds to finance their investments. Okay, that's number one. The cost of borrowing will be higher. And at the same time, it will more be attractive to have this, what we call it, havens, currency havens in banks. So I I hope that's not going to be a high increase, because that will reflect more on our economy, and we need to grow our economy. Again, so I know it's a dilemma.
Yes,
it's
it
a
is.
banker, economist dilemma.
And
Stagflation. You have the two in front of you.
it's a problem.
During
It's
the
a big
pandemic, we had recessions, not inflation.
problem. Yes.
Now you have cost-based inflation with the outcomes of the pandemic. We are not yet out of the pandemic as a recovery in terms of economy. Egypt and all countries as well. But we started to go out, and all of a sudden this February 24 happened, whatever I want to call it. Yeah.
We don't want to call it.
Shaza,
We don't, if we
leave it like this.
if we get back to what we are speaking about here, Dr. Ibrahim, and we're speaking about monetary, hopefully, at this upcoming period, we'll see, as per today's meeting of the Prime Minister with the CBE governor, we'll be seeing about that. What should we be expecting at this upcoming stage regarding Egypt's steps? What should the country be focusing very much at this very upcoming stage? Yes, we are aware that we have made the reform program a very hard and harsh one that gave us a live breath during the coronavirus or during the pandemic times. Now we're speaking about a global crisis. It's as big as the coronavirus. What should we be, as Egypt, as a developing country, what should we be focusing on in terms of, should we be focusing on markets of Africa, for instance, as a different market that we need to invest in? I mean, here, your thoughts of what should be the next steps that Egypt should carry out with?
In a macro view, I think we have to increase our size of the economy. And that would be increasing domestically, so you have to provide more employment, okay? And then you have to look at your exports. Exports, you have to have either the natural resources exports, which I think what Egypt is focusing in, especially the underground resources, more or less. Tourism is one of our exports, if I call it export. The Suez Canal is another one. So I think we have to focus on more into exporting our natural resources. And I think if you heard about the Golden Triangle, which is on, there is so many resources that are being explored over there, and I think Egypt also is focusing on that. A mega project is essential in that area, and this is a very secured area. There is no political or military struggle in this area. So I think Egypt should focus on expanding the economy, which means providing employment for our population, and that's very important. I think it should be our first priority, because the only way we can tackle these kind of problems is by having a strong economy. And I think with all the infrastructure done in Egypt, the infrastructure, and it's not us Egyptians saying that, those who come from outside Egypt, when they come to visit Egypt, or they see the reports done now, they believe that Egypt has done appropriately in the infrastructure. So all we need is to attract the investments, and we have to identify the conglomerate industries that can enable Egypt to export, because we need the hard currency to back our reserve. And this is the focus for me.
Yes. I guess that takes us to the end of our episode, but I want here to end with with this statement you said. Crisis could turn into opportunities. And with that hope, we leave this episode. Yes, with God's will. Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, Professor of Economics, thank you so much for being with us and for your input. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you very much.
Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next debate would be on Sunday, so until Sunday, it's good night.